Hi, Warren.
Hello, hello.
I'm really excited you're here because you, first off, are in Texas, so holla to us Texans. But
Yeehaw.
second, like everything you sort of embody is very much in alignment with what I believe and do and work towards. So I just think you're such a great example of someone who's a business driven entrepreneur, content creator, but also like you have a lot of integrity in what you do. So, for people who are listening who don't know who you are, how do you tell people or explain to people what it is that you do? I'd be very curious to hear this.
Yeah, so I mean, the title has changed a lot. Nowadays, community building strategist is typically what I go by. But it's changed a lot. I mean, I've definitely worn a lot of different hats. And, used to be a studio manager for a celebrity fashion photographer, then moved into, Instagram consulting and being an Instagram growth strategist. And then realizing that a lot of the methodologies that I was creating were platform agnostic, meaning they applied on every single platform. And so I developed this methodology called the 7 C's of building a fanatical community. And that kind of took it to where I could just anybody who is building an online platform. I don't work with anybody. I really work with more like impact driven entrepreneurs that have, something really interesting to say. They're interested in facilitating like these intellectual conversations online to the masses. I really like working with those people now. And so I get an opportunity to do that. And then also, run a nonprofit organization that inspires wonder of the ocean by teaching the world about octopuses, which is what a lot of people know me for.
Yes. Most people probably know you for running the OctoNation Instagram platform, which has how many followers at this point?
I think on Instagram, we're up to like 300,000.
Incredible. And then do you have other platforms that you have a
Yeah.
pretty
So yeah, we have close to 700,000 members across all of our platforms. I mean, we're on TikTok, Twitter, Facebook groups. So yeah, we're everywhere.
where did where along that journey of you moving from fashion studio manager to helping people grow their following did you go, octopus
Yeah.
platform?
So when I was 7 years old, I took a field trip to an aquarium. And I remember that day, they told us we're just walking in a single file line. Nobody's going to touch anything. And I was walking through the line and I have ADHD and remember thinking, I can't really see anything. And so I was like, if I drop to the end of the line and just drop off, no one's going to know that I'm not with the class. And so I just moved to the back of the line. And, when you're that age, everybody wants to be as close to the front of the line as possible for whatever reason. Like that was like status, it's like being first in line. And I was like, nope. I was like, I'm fine with the back of the line. So I went to the back, and then I finally just dropped off. And I remember touring the aquarium by myself, and being in front of the octopus exhibit, looking up, and just being like, that thing is the most alien thing I've ever seen in my life. And I just became obsessed with what is that, and I went to the library to look at books, and none existed. And I was like, wow, it must be really alien because nobody's ever even written about it, and there weren't any resources at all. And so it wasn't until later on, like, fast forward, I'm, working as a studio manager for a celebrity fashion photographer, that the book, The Soul of an Octopus, came out by Cy Montgomery. And in the first 3 pages, she talks about how the octopus has always been a misrepresented, mischaracterized, this creature that in Hollywood was portrayed as malicious. Ursula, she's not the nicest of, she's misunderstood, right? But was always just this creature that was just, misrepresented. And I thought I could, identify a lot with that. And I said, they just don't know the octopus's story. And it's never been presented in a way that would make anybody remotely interested, And so I started, because in the fashion industry, we worked with influencers, we worked with celebrities, and we paired them with clothing, and, the brand would tell their story through clothes and stuff like that. I said, what if I took the octopus and I essentially rebranded it, and I started storytelling, and I started connecting it with people who I admired and were making a difference. And so I essentially took that same model and I applied it to something that I was was always obsessed with, which was the octopus, because I felt like there needs to be, more emphasis on this creature because I think it's amazing. And so I started playing around with it. I started writing about it. I started reintroducing the animal as a superhero of the sea, that depending on where it lived in the ocean, because octopuses live in every single ocean, they live along every coastline. And depending on where they live, they have a unique adaptive trait that allows them to be masters of their environment. And so I use that as the symbol of, resiliency, of, you can be the master of your environment. If you're a kid, you're growing up in a really strange place, like figure out how to adapt in that environment and get through it and become resilient. And so it started blowing up. I started getting featured by Ellen DeGeneres. People like Joe Rogan started sharing my posts. Celebrities started following us. And but it was all very strategic. I started collaborating with underwater photographers, building campaigns out, and then realized a lot of my friends were like, how are you doing this? Is it just because the octopus is a great niche? I'm like, no, it's because like I know how to build campaigns. I know how to strategically collaborate with people that cater to my audience. I'm just marrying my passion with marketing. And so I started working with some of my friends and helping them with Instagram. And that's how Instagram kind of take off, where I started building out campaigns for them. They started going viral and they're like, you should do this full time. And I was like, okay, well, how much would you pay for this? And they're like, well, you built my whole entire brand. So, I started working with, my now husband, Roberto, and him really explaining value and money and, what other people were charging. And I started, essentially launched my career as a consultant and started doing that full time.
In what ways are you, or in your life, have you been resilient like an octopus?
I mean, my house, I grew up, like I said, 7 brothers and sisters. My mom, did the best that she could with all of us. She was divorced and with 3 other guys, not at the same time.
I
But
figured.
she, we went through this like growing up where it was just kind of like chaotic, and we really didn't know, where was next. My mom got into an accident. She became a prescription drug addict. So there was a lot of me, instead of focusing on my life and how sad it was that I'm in this circumstance or whatever, I used it as a way to become a high performer. I, was first chair in band. I was editor of the yearbook. I, was in JHS, and I just kind of removed myself from the situation and became the best that I could be in that environment. And so, yeah, so I would say that just, kind of using that and being like, I can kind of create whatever world I want to create really helped me out.
No, it's fascinating, right? I think that so many of us, especially creatives, and I think even people part of the LGBTQ community like us, I think we've all learned how to adapt to our environments, and I think it's necessary.
Yeah. And I would say too that growing up, I mean, I didn't come out until after I graduated high school. And I remember having this fear that, because a lot of times people ask like, why were you such a performer? And honestly, there was this underlying feeling that I had where, if for whatever reason my mom, wasn't okay with it, or my parents weren't okay with it, or the world wasn't okay with it, I could be like, well, look, I'm such high performing in all these things. I'm a good person. Like, yes, I have this thing about me, but look at all these other things. So it's kind of like I was kind of overcompensating with being a high performer, because I was like, at least, they could see that I'm a worthy person based on all these things. Because during the time, I guess I was growing up, I mean, it wasn't, being gay wasn't really looked at like it was now. It was like, it wasn't cool. It wasn't cool at
I
all.
know, I
And yeah,
remember.
yeah. And so it was a point of like, wow, like I don't know, there was a lot of feelings around it. And I remember my oldest brother, I mean, he was very much like, being gay was like the worst thing that you could be. I mean, you would be name called all the time. And, I was kind of effeminate when I was growing up. And I just remember him saying like, you're going to like, he would call me gay ever since I was like 5 years old. but it really put me into a position where I was like, I don't even know what that is, right? And so,
Right.
but he was kind of redefining, what that meant, and it was the last thing that you ever wanted to be. And I remember growing up thinking, like, wow, like at some point in time, I'm going to have to confront the fact that he was right. What can I do?
Mm.
Is there something I can do? Yeah, sure, I'll make straight A's. Sure, I'll be, in JHS. So I was kind of resilient through that, thinking like, okay, well, you know, I don't know. So I don't know if anybody else can relate to that, but that was totally me growing up.
No, I think we can. I mean, I was the same way, right? I have three brothers, and it was very much had to be busy and be really good at something because of this thing that I was trying to hide the whole time. Um and I think that for many people who are listening who are part of any marginalized community, or can probably relate to understanding, like, you know that the reason why I even started this podcast, right, is visibility, is like our visibility diminishes that need to overcompensate for what people around us see as not acceptable. And so I think just even you speaking to that is really helping somebody today. Thank you. Okay, so what is your sort of hope and your passion, as you're saying, like you're really trying to create more of a storyline around this underrepresented undersea creature, but what are you hoping to continue to grow or do with that brand for yourself as you support other people in their journey as well?
Yeah, I think OctoNation is really a model for that, many people can replicate from the standpoint of, like, we're a very like educational based community. You see our captions on Instagram; they're to the max. They're the longest captions you've ever seen, and they're written in such a way that, when I was thinking about the content and I was thinking about education, I thought about, if two friends met at a coffee shop or something along those lines and they saw a post on OctoNation, how could I empower that person to really be like, you know what, this is worth a conversation with my friend today, and I feel empowered by what I learned to have a conversation about it. Like OctoNation empowered me to be like, hey, did you know that an octopus has a tongue like a cat? Like, I just learned that today. I don't know why I feel like sharing it with you, but like, you really have to look at this account. Like, octopuses are like really cool. Like, I want to think about, how do you empower someone to facilitate these conversations around something that they think is wondrous or miraculous. And I feel like, oftentimes people with their content, it can be very ego driven, where it's like, what do I feel inspired to say today? And I kind of take it a step further, where I'm just like, what conversations can I facilitate between other people about
Mm.
something that is meaningful for them? Or how can I create, like with our merch and things like that, how can I create a conversation where somebody walks up and be like, where did you get that shirt? I really like it. And then have a conversation around, well, I got it from OctoNation. It's the largest octopus fan club. Then being like, I love octopus too. So I really think about the conversations that could potentially happen as a result of our brand and how we're facilitating that. And I really do that with everybody that I work with, is thinking, okay, outside of you, what is the impact that you really want to make, and how can we facilitate those interactions? It's just, I guess, a next level of thinking through education. And I feel like that's where we're at right now. Is I feel like people are really desperate to be educated and for information. And so you can become, now that, everybody has their own kind of like attention graph out there in the world, you can become that point of information, even if, like me, I don't have a degree in marine biology or science whatsoever. And yet I'm facilitating conversations that no one has ever been able to figure out how to facilitate in a way that's like really approachable and accessible. So a lot of times people with imposter syndrome, they'll like immediately count themselves out and be like, I don't have experience in that. And it's like, you don't necessarily need experience, but you have to be passionate about the thing enough to curate those conversations and really get down to the bottom of something.
Wait, say
So
that again. Say that again. The people, I think people need to hear that. So people with imposter, a lot of times people with imposter syndrome, there's different types of imposter syndrome, but you're saying that if your imposter syndrome shows up as, I need to be an expert in that field, I can't make content even though I'm passionate about it. Say that again.
yeah, it's not necessarily about you at all. It's about you being passionate about that area or that industry, and being like, okay, what conversations can I facilitate in this space amongst people? And that's what I really did with OctoNation, is like,
I
yeah, we
love
have a
that.
team of What?
I
Yeah, we
just
have a
love
team.
that. I
Yeah,
love
we
that.
have a team.
To me,
Sorry.
that everything you're saying, just to comment on this, is like it's about connection, and I think that that's what people miss out so much in social media because they're so busy being promoted to that they think that content is about promotion, and everything you're saying is really about connection. I just love that.
Yeah, and so every single time I think about, and this is just from my background in the fashion industry, you have to think about, when brands, they essentially have, I mean, all of these brands are selling cloth, right? And they're selling different forms of cloth. Some looks one way, another looks another way. A brand's job is to essentially breathe life into this fabric or whatever, and create a lifestyle with it, create a feeling, and so I think anybody can do that with whatever you're interested in. You can breathe life into it. It's just thinking about from a campaign standpoint, how are you going to achieve, what you want to set out to achieve? And so, like with me, with OctoNation, our mission is to inspire wonder of the ocean by educating the world about octopuses. And we can do that in a lot of really cool ways. So like one of our campaigns was Interview with an Octopus, where I would go to aquariums all over the world, and I would go on Facebook Live and I would introduce people to the octopus in a way that they've probably never seen it before, interacting with a person live on camera and realizing that they're not a malicious creature. They're actually pretty affectionate. They're like squishy puppy dogs. And, giving them an opportunity to ask their questions and to really have fun with the aquarist and meet them in a way that they've never met before. So a lot of people can't afford to go to the aquarium or in landlocked cities. And so this was an opportunity to be like, wow, to teach somebody who's in a landlocked, state about how wonderful the ocean is and how, miraculous this creature is, and how, that they, don't have a blind spot. They can see 360 degrees around their bodies, and, just trying to think of really creative ways in which to be that spark where people can be like, oh, like, I didn't really realize why I should care about the ocean, before, because nothing was really presented to me in a way that was compelling. But OctoNation, wow, this is a really great gateway into something that I want to start studying. And so when people see OctoNation as, oh, well, he's an octopus fan club, that's so weird, that's such a niche, I'm like, you can apply what I'm doing to what you're doing, my passion for what I'm doing, into building a campaign that really gets people talking about what you're doing. And so I really try to incorporate that with when I'm teaching or giving a presentation. It's just like figuring out what is that one thing that you can't stop talking about. You can build an attention graph or a career around it, a community around it, and really go to town.
Yeah. So, what do you think is the biggest obstacle for people when it comes to really clarifying that part of like building a platform of being visible?
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question. I mean, the way I kind of dealt with it in the beginning, as far as being visible was concerned, is hiding behind OctoNation, and really, yeah, and really being like, okay, well, I don't necessarily want to be seen, but I can really promote, this animal and get behind it. It wasn't until later that I started warming up and being comfortable with, being face to camera and talking about, how I was doing these things, just because I thought, the whole imposter syndrome, like, okay, yes, like I did all these really cool things, but at the end of the day, like I came from this house of, my past and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, nobody really cares about that. So, so my advice really would be, start out facilitating conversations with other people. It doesn't always have to be, all about you. It can be who you choose to bring to the world, what conversations you choose to have. Oprah is a really great example of that, as far as, having people on her show and bringing what Oprah was really good at was universalizing people's, messages to a broader audience. So she was really great at bringing on guests that, had written books or that were just, celebrities. And she would essentially take what they said and be like, okay, so what you're saying is this. And she would turn it into this universal knowledge that we all were just like, wow, that's really good. You're really smart, and and she just had this gift of doing that. And so we attribute a lot of our wisdom to Oprah, when in fact it was really a conversation between two people. And so, like, if you're that sort of person that like is just brave enough to facilitate conversations in a given arena, sometimes that's enough. If you want more than that and you're not doing it, that's when I would probably be like, okay, well, maybe it's therapy. Honestly, like therapy for me has been huge and just a lot of support. Like, I hired an executive leadership coach for the past 2 years to help me delegate things because I wanted so badly to control everything around me and
Hmm.
every single thing that was going out and all the wording and whatever, that it was like stunting the growth of my organization. And so I was like, I really want to get out of my own way and I don't know how. So what's the answer here? It's like, obviously it lies outside of me. Do I want help in this arena? Yes. Okay, I'm going to seek help. And then going through that process of like, what is it? Why do I not want to let go so bad? And really getting to the root of that and just being like, oh, it's because you're a middle child, oh, it's because, just all these different things that come up that you're not aware of. But my mom would always say it's don't be focus group of one, meaning, if you've already counted yourself out and you've never had a conversation with anybody about something, then that's called focus group of one, where it's mean like you've only consulted yourself and you've already counted yourself out. If you truly want to do something, then start opening up the conversation to, hey, I really want to be better, or I really want to grow this, or this is my vision. I can't get there, and start looking for help in that arena, so yeah.
I love that focus group of one. So it's so, I mean, I think so many people do that too. Or, the thing I talk about a lot is the comparison game that people play just because we're consuming so much content these days. As an entrepreneur, as an LGBTQ entrepreneur, I've noticed there isn't a huge amount of openly gay CEOs, leadership content creators, or people who are even, you don't really see that in that space. And I do think it's changing and evolving. But why do you think that is? Like, if you had an opinion, or what do you think it is that's keeping our world or our community, or even the entrepreneur community, of really embracing leadership within a community like that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different reasons why. I think, I mean, I can only speak from really like my personal standpoint from when it comes to. I always said, or the excuse that I gave myself when I was growing up, and when I would see other people who were like out and proud and doing all this, was just like, it wasn't like the main thing that represented me. I felt like, I don't want this to be like the part of me that everyone's just like, now looking back, I'm just like, okay, was that I just saying that to protect, some part of me to not be fully, who I was? Probably. I mean, there's probably still some trauma there. It could be just the lack of platforms that are brave enough to have this conversation. So applause to you for building a platform that is allowing people to come on and tell their stories. So I think as people start creating the market in certain things, like with OctoNation, me creating the market for, octopus curriculum, for octopus books, for octopus. When I first started OctoNation, they kept saying, the market is too small to write a book about octopus. We're not interested in that. And now there's a lot of books that are going to publication for octopus. You see, so I think it's very much like that. Until somebody is brave enough to prove a market in a given arena, then we just don't see it.
Yeah.
And so I think that could be a huge reason why. It's just like, okay, where previously has this been celebrated on, and and just looking kind of like it's at, where's the attention graph for that now? So
I
yeah, so
also
it's kind
feel
of
like,
like,
I also think, I mean, we're just kind of volleying here a conversation, but I also think something I've observed, at least, is I think that you're limited globally when it comes to being an openly LGBT business, because like very recently, I think I went on like Upwork or something and needed somebody to do some sort of graphic design. I can't remember what it was. I just was like I was like pitching something to somebody to have them help me with my website or something. And I didn't even look at where they were located, but they were located in like India or
yeah,
Syria or some foreign country. And they literally wrote me back and said, I can't help you with this, because it was for Broadway Husbands, for me and my husband's, it was for our Squarespace website.
uh,
And they said, I can't help you because this is against my religion.
mm.
Right. I'm like, but this is business. I'm paying you, honey. Like, and they were like, they were like, sorry. Right. And
Yeah,
it's sort
I
of
mean,
like, And I look at some of these world leaders who are these sort of like, Tony Robbins, or like these big, huge motivational business leaders, and I've always been like, I mean, they're great, they're teaching great stuff, but I'm not them. Like, I'm not,
Yeah.
I don't see myself in them.
Yeah, and I mean
And
that's that we're always looking, and that's why it's really important that people who are listening, who are just like, why me, or like what about my story, and they're like constantly, and be a focus group one, canceling yourself out even before giving yourself the opportunity to
yes.
create something. It's like people are desperate to hear your voice, or desperate for you to be visible, so they can be like, oh, I finally see um, my place. I finally
Yep.
see that I can create, or this is possible for me. And I totally agree with the Tony Robbins and just everybody. You're like, okay, but do you understand, what it's like to X, Y, Z?
Yeah.
And we're looking for our specific case, and we see that a lot in like communities. Like I work with somebody who runs Migraine Nation, which is like a community for women who suffer chronic debilitating migraine,
Mm.
and they have a completely different worldview because unfortunately, like their day just doesn't go by like yours, my day goes. They are completely debilitated by chronic migraine. And so when they're looking for thought leaders, they're looking for people, they're like, yeah, but do you currently understand that I'm only productive for maybe an hour out of the day or like 2 hours
Wow.
before I completely crash. So yeah, people are looking for the other people that are out there in the market that are representative of them. So we need more, people that are creating the platforms to facilitate conversations around different things, even if it's a lot of the same, even if it's teaching social media. There's a lot of different niches within social media. I always tell people, go look at Facebook's, or Meta now, but if you look at Meta's Facebook page and you look at the groups that they feature, they're all very niche, like I love hot sauce, or like all these different niche groups that have tons of different followers because of whatever. You can create your own community around that.
I love that. Okay, so where do you see your OctoNation going, or where do you hope it'll go?
I see OctoNation. I see the octopus being used as an animal because it's, the octopus has been on this planet for longer than dinosaurs, and they're still alive and they're still thriving. I see, I see them being used in a lot of different ways. Symbolically, they're just a creature that represents so much, from regenerative qualities, because they can grow, their arms completely back from their outer nerve bundles to the suckers completely 100% brand new, to being a really cool entry point, almost like Pokemon, got to catch them all. Like kids, I feel like when they're younger, like figuring out how to gamify and get them interested at a very young age about the ocean through something that is actually compelling, not through something that a teacher is just like, you should care just because it's important. It's like, unfortunately, kids aren't wired that way. And so I'm essentially creating what I wished would exist when I was 7. And I was kind of battling between why I should care about the ocean. And unfortunately, I don't want to say the education system failed me. I was just really apathetic about the ocean all through middle school, all through high school, very nihilistic in the way that I thought. And it wasn't only until I started, you know, championing the octopus and really getting down into how incredible this creature was and how worthy it was of people really understanding how incredible the world is and the ocean is through things that are in existence and have been in existence prior to even us, that I thought, this is a really compelling idea and conversation. So as far as where I see it going is just not that octopuses are going to save the world, but it's just like they're going to be a really interesting animal, because they previously weren't. And I think that I had a conversation with someone earlier this morning who I mentioned a lot of times people want to have a conversations around sustainability or not using straws, or they show massive amounts of pollution, or they show the mistreatment of animals in the wild. And that, to somebody who doesn't have an appreciation for the ocean right now, just like, wow, like we've really screwed up. There's no going back from here. I don't see any end in sight. Whereas if like they're first deeply anchored by something that impresses them, like the octopus, or they sort of get involved at an earlier age and they're like, no, we should fight for the ocean because actually I know so much about this creature, and this is their home too. I feel like it just changes the conversation. Anger isn't a sustainable emotion or feeling. And I feel like there's a lot of companies that are trying to reverse engineer people's giving a shitness about the ocean.
Hmm.
And I feel like you're getting at a point where you sound too evangelical. You sound like you're trying to evangelize people into caring, and
Hmm.
that's never going to work. So first,
Yeah.
you have to start from this place of like, okay, what is palatable and what are they going to truly walk away with and understand, and figure out how to incentivize them and get them interested. um, yeah, so I mean, I feel like I'm still kind of working on it. I've been doing this, since 2015, founded the nonprofit in 2018. So there's a lot of different collaborative efforts that I want to talk to like neuropsychologists and biologists and really figure out, am I going down the right path? But I think we're at a really good start right now.
Do you do you ever get tired of talking about octopuses?
So I don't, only because I use it as an example for what's possible with my other community leaders. And a lot of the campaigns that I'm doing and a lot of the marketing that I'm doing, can almost all of it can be applied to anybody else. And so I'll give them example with, okay, this is what I did with OctoNation to increase emails. This is what I did, and this is how you can do it with your thing too. So I feel like it's my best case study, and it's like something that I teach from, like my methodology. Like I perfected my 7 C's of building a fanatical community through being a practitioner and having my best case study be an international, recognized nonprofit organization. So I feel really good about that, and so that's kind of what I teach from. So not really. To answer your question.
Because I feel like there's some days where people, I think people think when you own your own business, you run your own business, that your sense of freedom goes up, right? Like, oh, I'm gonna just be free to do all these things, but in your situation, it sounds like it's. I mean, not that freedom is, of course, a byproduct because you're doing what you love,
Yeah.
but I don't know. Maybe you could just speak to a little bit about that work life balance and how you're able to like have this thing that you're so passionate about. You've been so passionate about your whole life. It encompasses everything you do. It's a picture on your wall. It's on your shirt. How do you balance that so that it's just like, okay, I'm gonna just like let the tentacles go for the night and just watch TV or whatever.
I think the best way that I can explain this is starting with how I work with the people or the creators that I work with now, my community leaders or my experts, or really whatever you want to call them. As we first start with sustainability, what is something that you really enjoy? What's something that you feel like you can do, and like you feel like it's illegal that you're even getting paid for it? It's like, wow, I really like, this is my guilty pleasure. Like for me, I love buying research papers about octopuses and just taking notes and being like, okay, I understand they're saying this, but how would I talk about it in a way that is actually like mainstream, or somebody could actually talk about in a really cool way?
Wait,
And I always felt like,
you love taking research papers, reading them, and then breaking them down and translating them for your
yeah,
audience.
if I was trying to tell a friend that didn't care at all about something, like how can I say this in a really compelling or convincing
That
way? And
does
I thought,
not sound like fun to me. That is
I
so
know, but
fascinating.
here's the thing. Like, I have this conversation with anybody that I start working with, is like, what is that one thing? And it's different for everybody. Emily D. Baker is somebody who I started working with. And she was like, if I could just watch the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills all day long, or like just the Real Housewives, thing, and just talk about it, she was like, I would just love that. And so I was like, okay. And I was like, you realize you can get paid for that, right? And she was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, yeah, like you could become a commentator on YouTube and get paid just to talk about the Real Housewives. And she was like, I don't see how that's possible for me. And I said, okay, well, let me map out this huge marketing strategy to let you know how this is possible for you. So I always start with somebody's like love, fascination, and something that would be sustainable for them, and then I kind of interweave their life stories. So she was a former deputy district attorney in Los Angeles for over 15 years, and so we were just like, okay, you're going to break down the law or the legal contracts behind the popular news stories that everybody likes to talk about, but you're going to bring it into pop culture. So you're going to talk about Britney Spears' conservatorship, the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills, Erica Girardi case, or whatever. You're going to talk about, these things that are happening, but you're going to talk about it to an audience that really wants to know, but can't really break down the legalese and the contracts. And so if you look at her YouTube channel right now, she pulls up legal contracts and she reads through it line by line and commentates. And she has over 200,000 followers. She makes a very good living doing this full time. So, I start there with everybody. It's just like really figuring out in this new world that we have where you can really create this online persona and brand. Start with something that really lights you up. For me, it's reading research papers and writing about octopuses. And I could turn that into a full-time career where I just worked for OctoNation full-time. But there's just something about me. I think it's this middle child syndrome where I want to help other people be like, okay, what do you really like? Oh, you think that's weird? Okay, let's make this your whole entire life or your whole entire world. And I've done this so many different times with so many different businesses and people that it's fun for me. It's like a puzzle almost. And so, yeah, I can't quite shake that aspect of it. so yeah,
Wow.
so yeah, that's for me, it's research papers. For other people, you'd be surprised. Like I worked with somebody that runs the largest Gilmore Girls fan club. And I was like, wow, that's still a thing. And she's like, yeah, it's still a thing. People are still living in Gilmore Girls fantasy land. And I was like, okay. She has a 6-figure a year business, talking about the Gilmore Girls. So it's possible.
Oh, that's so encouraging I think for so many people listening. So that's so fabulous, and I wish I
Yeah.
had met you. I wish I'd met you 10 years ago. I wish I'd
But
probably
with
be.
people, I always tell, it goes back to like one of the 7 C's of building a fanatical community, and the one that I stress on the most, because this is where it all starts, is clarity. So having clarity along the lines of who is the community for and what is it about. And the more vague those two things are, the more you have potential to alienate your audience and them not really understand where they fit in. So if you make the community too broad, then what happens is there's all these people that are just like, I don't think I fit in here. I'm not really seeing myself represented here. I don't, and then you kind of like muddy the community. Whereas when communities start, they should have a very clearly defined, market and people that they serve and problems that they solve. They can then grow from that. But I think first they have to establish this community of people that really understand why they're there and what the community is for and who it's for. So
So what are
yeah.
the 7 C's? So you said clarity.
Yeah, so clarity is the first one. Then you get into core values, which is what's the collective identity of the community. Like, with OctoNation, obviously we're very positive. We don't shame aquarists. We believe aquarists on the front line of ocean conservation. There's a lot of values that we tie into our community that make our community what it is. Then you get into content. How are you deserving of attention on a daily basis? How are you going to keep that attention to? And that's content. Then you get into collaboration. So who are you working with that essentially caters to your core values, that are people that you get along with. Like in our example with OctoNation, we would probably never work with PETA because PETA, has a lot, they're an animal rights organization. They're very polarizing, and that's not what OctoNation stands for at all. They're anti-aquarium. Animals are not ours to use for entertainment, to eat, all these different things. Again, obviously you can see that it wouldn't be a thing. So that's collaboration. Then you get into connection, and connection is how are you making your community members feel seen? So what campaigns are you creating so that your community, or what interactions are you creating so that your community says, you know what, I feel seen. I'm a part of this community, but there are opportunities for me to be seen by the larger community. So on our Instagram, you can pin comments, you can do caption this, you can give people opportunities to win stickers, you can do a photographer spotlight, you can do an artist spotlight, you can really make your community feel connected. Then you get into conversion, so how are you ethically converting your followers into either products, programs, services in a way that feels good, that's in line with your core values, that you feel like you're deserving of their attention. So it all feels great. And then the last one is consistency, and that's all about sustainability. So how are you doing this in a way that is sustainable to you, that you don't feel overwhelmed? Or if you do feel overwhelmed, it's a good overwhelm. Like you're like, I'm having a lot of fun. Yes, I'm doing a lot. Like me with OctoNation, like this international photography competition, this pitching to Discovery, these, nonprofit community professional award, this, I feel really overwhelmed all the time, but it's like this really good stress overwhelm type feeling where it's like, I don't feel like I'm behind. That's it's like creating something that's very consistent for you. And that's kind of like the seven C's. And if there's any part of those C's that feels kind of out of alignment or you don't have fully worked out, then your community, typically you'll see low engagement. You'll have like identity crises every day, being like, why am I even doing this? Am I even making a difference? All these different things that will come to you as a result of you not having this strategy on paper that you can see in front of you. That's like, this is why I do what I do. This is how I do it. This is how I'm going to keep myself from going crazy. I see the vision. And so I think it's really important that, the community leaders kind of map this stuff out.
That's really, really, really powerful. How do people learn more about not just OctoNation? Of course, we'll put a link in the description down below, but also working with you and learning about the 7Cs or any of that, the support that you offer.
Yeah, so I have a big intention this year in 2022 is to kind of reactivate my personal brand, because I did hide behind, and I'm sure anybody can relate, you hiding behind your clients or hiding behind, the job that you have, or hiding behind, whatever, is I kind of was like, okay, well, I'm cool. I can just, do my own thing and not really show up and talk to the camera and talk about, different things. And so this year I've making a conscious effort to have more of a personal brand. So if you look on OctoWarren on Instagram, I'm going to attempt to post more about me, post more about my clients, post more about what I'm involved with, and then try to extract some lessons that I can share with everybody else. But that's pretty much. I also have a community on Facebook called Community Growth and Profits with Roberto and me, where he talks about monetization. I talk about, building out campaigns, or let's look at campaigns that are really working right now. What are trends that are really working right now in communities? So I'd say those are two places where you can kind of discover about me.
Amazing. I'm so glad you came. Anything else you want to share or talk about that we didn't cover?
Yeah, I guess when there are opportunities to show up and have a conversation about LGBTQ visibility, that comes up during a conversation, I guess look for platforms that allow you to express all aspects of yourself. I think this is really fun and important. Even me saying, I have ADHD, I said it on a panel yesterday and the chat blew up.
Yeah.
With people being like, wow, it's really cool that Warren just mentioned that. So, I really feel like saying, hey, yeah, I'm gay, I have a husband, and we do this thing called life together, and he's this side of the monetization, I'm growth side, and seeing a productive relationship, and seeing how two people can work together to build something really cool is really important, and could inspire somebody else to look for that, or to feel like, hey, that's something that's possible for me. So yeah.
That's what I'm all about that. Helping that person to go, oh my gosh, I had a vision that could happen, and there's proof. Seeing you and Roberto, and then so we will put links down in the show notes for everyone to go check out Warren and everything he's about, all of his tentacles. So so thank you for coming here and chatting. I can't wait to see what this year brings you.
Awesome. Thank you, Bret.